It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker, Mr. Ashutosh Sharma, who is going to share with us his actual experiences with examples on the theme of the webinar, Authentic Leadership for HR. This is a subject in which we should all be deeply interested because with the valuable insights shared by Ashutosh ji through the webinar, we can best ensure our stand in the present in the new normal. Ashutosh ji is an extremely passionate and acclaimed HR professional with over 17 years of rich experience in senior talent management and leadership development roles. He has done his postgraduate management specialization from the University of California, Los Angeles, and his specialization in human resource management from IIM Kolkata, and has a Bachelor of Engineering in Electrical Engineering from the Delhi College of Engineering. He is currently associated in the capacity as Assistant Vice President for Human Resources at Garware Technical Fibres Limited. He has worked with leading organizations like Deepak Fertilizers and Petrochemicals Corporation Limited, the GMR Group, Confederation of Indian Industry, and SRF Limited. Ashutosh is also a Hogan graduate and a certified Thomas assessor for the DISC. He is a very passionate trainer and he has delivered hundreds of training programs across the world, including an exemplary campus to corporate program for the Cisco systems at San Jose. He is also the author of two popular books, one, Campus to Corporate, Managing the Transition, and two, Corporate Training Fast Pack. On behalf of ISTD, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ashutosh ji. Let's all say hi and welcome in the chat box. Taking a cue from the hospitality industry to which I belong, while toying with the theme of our webinar, Authentic Leadership for HR, brings back fond memories of pairing some of the world's finest wines and cheeses, which are so distinct but still offer a great enjoyable combination to deeply relation challenge. With this, I request Ashutosh ji to share his experiences on authentic leadership for HR. Over to you, Ashutosh ji.
Thank you, Dr. Rao, and good evening, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Rao, for the kind introduction. Sometimes, when you hear to the introduction, you do not even realize that it's you who's being talked about. Okay, thank you anyway. So now I'll just, before I start my presentation, I'll share my screen so that I can use the presentation that I made for today. Just 1 minute. I'll just put this on. Yes, right. So now, Dr. Rao mentioned that authentic leadership for HR is a very, very apt topic. And in fact, when I got to know that I was supposed to speak on this topic for ISTD, obviously, one needs to go out and pick brains of your friends and colleagues to understand what questions do they have, what experiences do they have about the topic. So I called up a friend of mine from college. I thought, let me pick his brains on the topics. And I told him that I'm going to speak on this topic, authentic leadership for HR, for ISTD, on Monday. So he immediately said, yes, it's a very good topic. And I think you guys need it. All you HR guys need it. So I thought, something good is going to come to me now, some good inputs for the program. So he said, yes, during this lockdown, the only thing that my HR could think of was Antakshari on Zoom to keep us engaged. So you guys need to be really authentic. You need to come out with some authentic ideas. So I said, okay, thank you. So what he did was, brought in the stereotypical image of HR and the current context, of the lockdown to pull my leg. So, but it was not all useless because I got an idea from that interaction. I thought, let me also connect this topic with the current context of COVID. And, so the metaphor that came to my mind was that of mask. So authenticity, generally we look at it, a person without mask is somebody who's authentic. So with this metaphor, let us start the topic. In this talk, I'm going to discuss with you today what authentic leadership means, what authentic leadership does not mean, what authentic leadership means specifically for HR, and why HR leaders today need it. So these are broadly the topic, and I'll also share with you certain anecdotes, certain examples, and even a few tools also to demonstrate authentic leadership. Now, before we get into it, another, this picture also, is related to the context. You can look at this beard, which I grew during lockdown downtime. So this is, I thought, this picture represents me. So what is authentic leadership anyway? Is the question that people usually ask. And if you ask people this question, you will be surprised to see this, the swiftness with which people will come with inputs. Right? So people will say, does it mean always being truthful? So truthful, being authentic means speaking the right thing, speaking the truth every time. Is that what being authentic means? Does it mean freely demonstrating and acting out what you feel like? Does it mean not doing what you don't like doing? Does it mean being committed to your identity and behaving in a consistent manner always? So if you ask these questions, some people will say that it means being committed to a value system. Some people will say that it actually means all these things. Some people will say, no, it does not mean any of these things, right? But let us look at each one of these again and go into detail. I just sort of read it out for you, but let us look at it in a little bit more detail to understand if this is what authentic leadership means. Does it mean always being truthful? I'll give you one example. I was listening to a podcast some time ago, and in the podcast, there's this behavioral economist, psychologist called Dan Ariely. Some of you might have read his book, on human psychology. So now Dan Ariely met with a serious accident in his youth, and he got 70% burns, and he had to undergo a number of surgeries. So he shares in that interview that he was to undergo a procedure in a week's time, and before that he asked the nurse, "Is it going to be very painful? Are you going to give me anesthesia before you put me through this procedure next week?" So she said, "No, it's not going to be painful at all. We'll not give you any anesthesia." But he says that after 1 week, when he went there and underwent that procedure, it was quite painful, right? But then he thought, why did the nurse lie to him? And then he thought that it actually helped him, because that one lie actually saved him 1 week of pain in anticipation of the pain, right? So what should we say, whether that nurse was inauthentic, right? Because her intention was pure. So being truthful alone maybe doesn't appear to be authentic. Now, does it mean freely demonstrating and acting out what you feel like? Basically, whatever comes naturally to you. Some people would say yes. Some people would agree to it. Yes, acting in a natural way is what authenticity means. Acting in a natural way is what authentic leadership means. But just think of it. If it is in the nature of a person to just lash out at people, shout at people, right? Should that person do that? Is that being authentic? Is that even leadership, right? So this is not obviously authentic leadership. And plus, if we allow people to freely demonstrate and act out what they feel like, it would lead to incivility. It would not lead to authentic leadership at all. Does it mean not doing what you don't like doing? Some people say yes, that's what it is. I don't, this thing does not come naturally to me. I don't like doing this kind of work. I'll do what I like doing, what I'm good at, and then only I can be authentic. Well, there is no guarantee that you'll always get the work that you like doing. In fact, there is one essay, it's a essay by somebody called Ian Gray, Common Denominator of Success. And in that essay, the author says that the common denominator of success is actually opposite of what we are saying in bullet number 3. People who are successful are capable of doing those things which they do not like doing, right? And that is why they are successful, because for them commitment to something greater is more important than their mere like or dislike, right? So this third point also is not authenticity. Does it mean being committed to your identity and behaving in a consistent manner always? Looks like it, but if everybody commits to a particular identity and remains consistent, people will not grow, people will not learn. So this also is not a complete definition of authenticity. Does it mean being committed to a value system? Well, we should remember that even people like Hitler and all also were committed to a value system, which was possibly not based on a proper ethical background. So even this might not always be authentic leadership. So it does not mean all these, it does not mean none of these. Maybe some of these come into authenticity, some of these do not come into authenticity, but these things alone cannot define authenticity. In fact, one should realize that authentic leadership is not simply natural behavior or automaticity. So that is not authentic leadership, because and also not mere consistency, because all these things are about self. These things are not about others. In leadership, it is more about others, right? You cannot be authentic unless you are bringing others in the picture. So these are not authentic. Somebody is raising hand. Dr. Rao, somebody is asking question, or what should I do? Should I continue? Dr. Rao?
I think we'll keep the Q&A in the end.
Okay, fine. Sure. So those of you who have questions, maybe you can just hold on to your questions, and after the presentation is over, probably we'll take those questions. So I'll go on then. Now, what is the current consensus on authentic leadership? Authentic leadership is also a subject of research. People have studied it a lot, and what they have identified, largely, broadly, not only for HR, but these are four areas where authentic leaders demonstrate their competencies. First is self-awareness. They know what they are good at, what they are not good at. They know what are their values, what is that they value, what is important to them. They demonstrate a sort of relational transparency, which means that they are able to somehow share their thoughts, opinions, beliefs with other people. And while they do that, they ensure that they do not demonstrate inappropriate behaviors, right? They are able to do that skillfully, so to say. Right? Balanced processing means that they are able to draw out people. We know many times people do not speak out in front of mainly people who are in stronger position, more powerful position to them, because of inherent fears and apprehensions. So such leaders are able to draw out people to share their opposing views, and are also able to consider those views with all fairness. They are aware of their own inherent biases, their prejudices, stereotypes, if at all, and they ensure that those filters, those mental filters, are not coming in their way of accepting or considering the views of others. So they know that. Now, internalized moral perspective basically means having a ethical foundation and and decision making which is based on ethics, right? So all these things, when I read, I try to process them, and in one line, if I have to define authentic leadership, I would say authenticity of intention to achieve common goals, right? So I should know what the common goals are for the team, and I should have an intention to achieve them, to help people achieve them. And when I do that, I should be following an ethical path. So that, according to me, is authentic leadership. Now, why HR leaders should bother becoming authentic? So if we go by what my friend said, no, it is not just to come out with better ideas to keep people engaged during lockdown period, having better ideas than Antakshari and Zoom. It is for obviously for a larger purpose, larger reason. I just on a website I read this. Trust, consistency, key to building great workplaces. It requires no research actually. So it requires no study. We know that if even intuitively we know that if there is trust in the system works well. Employees give their best to the organization, right? We know that intuitively. We have seen that in action as HR professionals, as even leaders. Now, but what happens? What's the reality? If you look at how people perceive HR, it is a little more than what my friend told me. They actually hate HR. If some of you would have read this article which came in in the Fast company uh, 15 years ago, and this article was celebrated across. People liked it a lot, and many people obviously from HR wrote against it. They did not hold the same views. But this summarizes, if you go through this article, it summarizes the general feeling that people have for HR. A recent study found 1 out of 5 people or workers don't trust HR. So I think this is optimistic. I thought the number would be even more disappointing. And I don't know, this study was conducted in US. I don't know what it would be for India. So one thing is for sure that, HR somehow has not been able to build trust. People don't easily trust HR. So that is one thing which is for sure, which I have seen in my career. And such caricatures of HR also convey the same thing. You would have realized what I'm trying to show. It's Catbert of Dilbert, who's the evil director of HR, right? Whose only work is to create problem and trouble for people in the company and possibly exploit them. So now this is something which has been sadly the state of HR. And in such a state, I suppose it is very important for HR to build trust. And authenticity can create that trust. So we know that intuitively, but there was another research I'll share with you, recent research. This is a study, very, very interesting study. So in 2 groups of people were asked to record video pitches, which were to be given to general public, and the idea of these video pitches was to basically persuade them, to appeal to people to donate for a certain cause, right? Now, what was the difference between these 2 groups? Both were supposed to do the same thing, prepare a video pitch wherein they were supposed to ask people to donate for a cause. But one group was incentivized. Money was given to one group for preparing those video pitches. Another group was not incentivized. They were just asked, as pro bono, they were supposed to do this work. Now, quite interestingly, the people who saw these videos did not know who was incentivized, who was not incentivized. But, it had its own impact. The study found that people were more likely to donate after watching videos of group B here, the group which was not incentivized. People who were doing it because they felt like doing it, people who were more sincere, right? So this study likely proves that authenticity can create trust, or authenticity appears to be more sincere to people, even when the person himself does not know, and the other guy also does not know what's going behind the scene. Now, if authenticity can create trust, just imagine what HR can do with authentic behaviors. It can create trust in people, employees, and it can drive business numbers. How? I think you might have read about this concept called customer satisfaction mirror, which says that customers will be satisfied only when the employees are satisfied. If employees are dissatisfied, the customers will be dissatisfied. So satisfaction in employees is increased obviously by increased trust. Their productivity increases. So if we increase trust among employees, it increases trust among the customers also, and thereby it can add directly to the business. So that is why authenticity is very important for HR. Now I tried to, based on what I just discussed with you, the underlying constructs of authenticity. Going by that, I just thought of writing it in my own language. What authenticity should look like in HR. Now, I made self-awareness a little more broad. I think it is awareness which is required. And awareness, you can call it mindfulness, you can call it presence, you can call it whatever. So it is required to guide actions. It is required to take decisions which are appropriate to the difficult situations. I'll talk more about it in coming slides. Let me just go through all the four here in this slide. Second is courage. As HR leaders, we are supposed to have difficult conversations with people. Difficult conversations not only with employees sometimes, but also difficult conversations with business leaders. We have to raise hands. We have to tell them, sometimes that what you are thinking, what you are doing might not be right and might have undesirable consequences. So as leaders, we need to demonstrate that courage, and that courage comes from authenticity alone. At the same time, we need humility. We need to ask questions without presupposing anything, without having biases, without having assumptions, without having stereotypes. We need to ask people what is their point of view. We need to go to people. We need to go to the ground level to understand people. So humility is an important thing. And finally, integrity. Taking ethical decisions based on a firm value system, as was the case in the previous slide that I shared. Now let us look at all these one by one. What do I mean by awareness? So many people will say many things, but here in awareness, I will like to cover two very important things for HR. Right. The first is something called presence. I'll just come to this. I don't know how many of you have read about this experiment called the Good Samaritan experiment. Some of you might have read the story also. It's a biblical story which talks about how a person, a Samaritan, helped a guy who was robbed and left on the street by robbers. Now, this team of researchers wanted to study how likely are people to help those in need, and what could be the factors that affect our inclination to help people or not. Now, what they did was, in this short experiment, they carried it out at Princeton theological seminary students. They had them, and they asked them to prepare a short speech, 3 to 5 minutes, and the topic of the speech was how to be a good minister, not the political minister, but one from the church. So in fact, 50% of the participants were all asked to go through the parable of Good Samaritan and include it in their speech. They wanted to see whether having religious thoughts actually impacts your inclination to help others. Now, participants were told that you will not have to give this speech in the campus, but in a building across the street from campus. So they were basically supposed to walk from campus to the other building. Now, and they were sent one after another. And some people were told that you have to you still have some time, but it would be better that you go right now and wait there in the other building while the panel gets ready for your speech. Another set was told that you are expected anytime soon, so it would be better that you rush and reach there. So they were, slightly rushed category. And the third category was told that, you are quite late. You are expected there. Please rush. Please go there. And people were supposed to walk from campus to this building across the street. And in the street, the researchers staged an incident. And this incident, appeared like somebody was, an actor was actually lying down in a doorway, and his head was down, eyes closed, etc. And he was also coughing so that, he could get attention from people. And he looked like somebody who was obviously in need of help, and people like you and me, if we actually pass by, we should, have that inclination, that inkling to help the person. Now, what researchers found shortly, I will tell that this first group of people who were in no rush were the most likely to help this guy. People who were in rush were not likely to help the guy, and many of them actually stepped over the person. Is what the research says. So now, what do we understand? How is it even important for our topic today? This is all about presence. And as HR leaders, if we are not present in the moment, if obviously we have 1,000 things to do, 1,000 things on our head, but if we are not present when help is needed, if we are thinking about the upcoming meeting when an employee reaches out to us for help, for sharing something, so we might not even be able to empathize what the other person needs. Will not be present to help him. Though physically we'll be present, but psychologically we will not be there. Right? So this ability to pause and ponder, I suppose, is a very important aspect of being an authentic HR leader, because it helps you understand the context and environment. If you do not stop and watch, if you are thinking about future, if you are in the meeting before it even begins, then probably you'll miss a lot of things. So this question, what else is going on around me, is very, very important. To be present, to be aware of what's going on. And it helps you to remain in touch with your feelings and emotions and be empathetic to the needs of people. So when I say awareness, presence is the first thing. Presence makes you be there when you are needed, right? And that makes you authentic. Second important thing is, as HR people, we do a lot of conversations, a lot of conversations with leaders, with employees, with even our colleagues, with business leaders. So how do you become more authentic in your conversations? Now, conversations, there are generally two parts. One is what we say, and somebody, I'll share an example also with you subsequently. So there are two parts: what's said, and then there is something which is thought and not said. There are assumption, underlying assumption. There is a dialogue which keeps on going inside our minds when we are talking to others. So now it is the second part which comes in the way of authenticity and effectiveness of communication. And to help us understand this second part, there was this great organizational psychologist, is also supposed to be father of or the founding fathers, one of the co-founders of the field of organization development, Chris Agairis. He developed this technique, very important, left-hand column technique, which helps us see gaps in our conversations and helps us reflect on what we said and what we did not say. And it helps us raise our awareness and make us better communicators, more authentic communicators. So let us look at this, how this technique looks like. So it's like, on the top it says there will be a problem, or the kind of difficult conversation you are going to have. Step 2 is what I said in that conversation. Step 3 is what I was thinking while I was saying what was said. And then the fourth important part is reflecting over what I said. Let us quickly look at an example. Now, so assume that there are these two gentlemen. Rahul is the employee, John is the HR manager. And just look at this conversation. I just made this up, so please, bear with me if it doesn't look very, very good, because I write non-fiction books, not fiction books. So let us see. Say Rahul comes and he says, "Hey John, I want to talk to you about a problem that's been bothering me for some time." HR manager John says, "Oh, sure, Rahul, tell me about it." With all the enthusiasm, he says. So he says, "I've been facing problem with my supervisor, who's Kamal is his name." So so John says, "So have you spoken with him about it yet?" And he says, "No, I'm worried it won't help." So John says, "Maybe it will work if you give it a try." Rahul says, "No, some people tried earlier and they faced vindictive action." John replies, "Okay, then do tell me about your challenges." So he says he keeps dumping work on me and never appreciates any work that I do. John says, so what, would you like me to give some feedback to him?" And Rahul says, no, I thought you'd have some other ways of helping me out. Or maybe Rahul is disappointed from John's reply in this conversation. Now let us look at what was happening behind. Now comes the power of left-hand column thing. So here, on the left side, you can see Rahul have kept as such, though he might also have his left-hand column. For John, let us see how it looks. So for John, you see right-hand column says what he said. Left-hand column says what he thought and did not say. So he says, "Okay, sure, Rahul, tell me about it." But what is he thinking? He says he's thinking, here comes another employee with a trivial complaint. And then he says, "Have you spoken with him about it yet? About spoken with the boss about the problem yet?" What he's thinking is that why doesn't he try himself before seeking out help? Maybe it will work if you give it a try. But he was thinking he doesn't even bother to try and is making assumptions. When he says, "Okay, then do tell me about your challenge," he's saying, "Okay, let me just hear him out. Though I think that it might not be that serious a thing." And finally he says, "Would you like me to give some feedback to him?" What he was thinking, let me offer to do something for him which he cannot, right, with frustration. Now this was what was going inside uh, John's mind when he was talking to Rahul, but it was not made explicit to him. Obviously, I'm not saying that he should have spoken in that way, but it has some implications for what the conversation should have looked like to be more authentic. So now, what John should do after going through this problem, this conversation, he should try to populate this right hand and this left hand and then reflect over it. First, he should reflect over his intention. What was his intention while carrying out this conversation? Does it even look like that his intention was to help? Or was his intention to just get over with the conversation as soon as possible and reach to some conclusion? What did the conversation achieve? If John looks at it, he will realize that it actually achieved disappointing the person even further, and it eroded the trust in HR. Right? So it was not effective. What were some of the assumptions that he made? He thought that this guy, Rahul, is coming to me. He has not even tried anything. Maybe he's just coming up with complaints. Those are the assumptions that he made, right? Did he ask, could he have asked any questions to verify those assumptions? Maybe he could have, he could have not tried because maybe he did not have skills necessary to face his boss, to confront his boss, or have an open dialogue with the boss. So that might be the problem. Problem might not be his attitude. It might simply be a skills issue. But John would not know unless he asked right questions. So what are the alternative, better ways of handling this conversation is what John should look at. What more questions could he have asked Rahul to understand, is this a problem that he has been facing for quite some time? Is this a problem that he recently has started facing? Are other employees also facing the same problem? Right? So such questions, he did not ask, and that is the reason that this conversation was so ineffective. So now, what prevented Rahul, or sorry, John to ask or try out those ways is also a question that John should look at. Now, so this kind of reflection, if we do on a regular basis of difficult conversations, we'll get to know a lot about our own assumptions, about underlying biases that we have, and over time it will make us more and more effective. I'm not saying that you expose yourself by telling the other person what is in your left hand column. Not at all. You have to be uh, obviously, very, very guarded about it, but you should at least use those left-hand thoughts to clarify your intentions, to also check and validate your assumptions. So that is how, over time, you can have more authentic conversations, right? So Chris Argyris had some more tools also, which he has, which he has developed, which helps us become more authentic. One is ladder of influence, which helps us understand how, sometimes we look at data, look at facts, have observations, and then quickly jump to conclusions, right? Without testing our assumptions properly. Left hand column technique, obviously I shared with you. Then he talks about double loop learning, and then there's a methodology of dialogue, which does not come from Chris Argyris, but comes from David Bohm, who was a very well renowned physicist, actually, but even contributed to the field of organization development. So these are some models and practices that HR leaders should know and should practice to become more authentic. Another important thing that I spoke about being authentic is courage. Now, this is one picture that I saw. Some of you also might have seen it earlier on LinkedIn. I saw, and it was when I saw it, some 3,000 people had already liked this image, and it says that today, one day, the people that didn't believe in you will tell everyone how they met you. Right? The opinion of people is very important for us. Right? Even in this cartoon, which is supposed to somehow motivate you to keep on going by ignoring what people are saying, is also talking about what people will say about you in 5 years. So it is external validation again. It is not what actually should be, right? So it only goes on to prove that opinion of others is very important for us. The 3,000 likes only further proves that, right? It's actually insecurity that leads to inauthentic behaviors. Insecurity about others, what others are thinking of us, how others can impact us, right? And when it comes to insecurity, fear, threat, I'm going to use them interchangeably. It gets defensive responses from us. And what kind of defensive responses? There is this, theory by Karen Horney, a psychologist, a great psychologist, who said that these are the 3 ways in which we deal with fear, with pressure, with the stress. We either move away from the situation, or we move or push the other person away, moving against, which means, or we move along, which means that we comply with whatever the other person is saying. Right? So move away, just shy away from the place, don't participate, don't speak. Move against, become very aggressive with the other person, or move along, or just comply with whatever the other person is. The fear gets these kind of defensive responses from us and others. And this is what exactly comes in the way of being authentic, right? So now here, I just wanted to, along with courage, I also wanted to talk about this very, very, very powerful model, which was developed by Dr. David Rock, explained very beautifully in a book called Your Brain at Work. It says that there are these 5 parameters which decide whether we as human beings are in an away mode, which is threat response, or in a towards mode, in a reward response, or an open mode, right? So if we create a positive atmosphere for us and for others on these 5 parameters, it is more likely that authentic behaviors will come out, because we'll be in a toward state rather than an away or a threatened state. So what are these 5? One is status. Status is simple. Where do I lie in that hierarchy, right? In the pecking order. So if I ask for somebody's advice, even simply doing that actually raises the status of the person and puts him in more towards response. Certainty. So if I do not talk in ambiguous terms and talk in certain terms, not in tentative terms, but in certain clear terms with other people, give them clear direction, then I create a more positive atmosphere. If I do not impose things on others, but let them take their own decisions, provide them more autonomy, that puts them in a towards response. If I create an atmosphere where people feel related, they do not feel that they are part of an outside group, then they are in a toward state, and similarly fairness is in fact the most powerful of all of them. Fairness can drive people mad actually. If I feel that I have been dealt an unfair hand, you never know what I will do, right? So fairness is a very powerful emotion that can create a lot of threat in the system, right? So if we are aware of these 5 social parameters and know how to use them well, it leads to more authentic behaviors, right? Then finally, humility. Here I would like to tell you a story. Now, this story I read somewhere. It's about giraffe on the highway. So there was this guy who used to come on the highway every day, and he used to raise his hands and shout a lot. Keep away, he used to shout. Right? After 3-4 days, one person watched him and he came to him. What are you doing here? Every day coming here and shouting at the top of your voice, keep away, keep away. What are you doing? He said, I'm keeping away the giraffes. So the person looked puzzled. He looked around. He said, there are no giraffes here. He said, see how successful I am at keeping away the giraffes. So we actually, it might feel very funny, but most of us are like that. We take too much credit for things. As HR leaders also we do. So if we get a very high employee engagement score in the company, probably we did something because of which employee engagement score went up. Just a simple example. So if managers are successful, probably we did something to make them successful. We take too much credit for things. We should probably stop doing that. We assume that our perspective is obviously correct. In meetings, we say that we pass judgment sometimes on people. We pass judgments on situations, and we become probably offended also sometimes if others do not agree with our perspective. So that goes against humility. We assume that we can provide advice and suggestions and others should take them without question. I want to club it with, we sometimes have off-the-shelf available ideas and solutions. Let us do an outbound training program, right? Let us change this process. Let us change that process. Let us, put in place a best practice. And in doing all that, we do not involve others. We do not invite suggestions. We do not invite advices from those where, these things will be, those who will be subjected to these interventions. So that goes against humility. We don't want to appear incompetent probably by asking questions, by talking to people, and by accepting that we don't have all the answers. So that goes against humility, and that leads to inauthentic behavior. So not jumping to conclusions, asking questions with an intention to understand the persons, and not providing off-the-shelf solutions is something that helps. We should rather partner with business. It appears cliched, partnering with business, but it works. When you have to design solution, you need to talk to people. Otherwise, you will not be helpful at all. And here I would recommend a very, very, very small but very powerful book by Edgar Schein. It's called Humble Inquiry. Please do read that book. It's an amazing book. Then finally, integrity. Integrity, most of us believe that we know a lot about integrity and ethical dilemmas, etc. So now let us look at some ethical questions that might come in front of an HR person. What would we do if somebody offers us a kickback for closing a deal? What would we do if there's a vacancy in our company and a relative of ours is a candidate? What would we do if, do we use company vehicle for personal use? Do we settle personal scores with employees by spoiling their performance ratings? Do we discriminate knowingly against people based on, different criteria? Do we do that? Does that make us integral? We don't do all these things probably. Most of us don't do, because answers to these questions are very, very simple. These are not dilemmas. These are straightforward things that we are not supposed to do these things. Right? It is more difficult questions, people face. So what would you do if you feel, you don't know for sure, but if you feel that a hiring manager has rejected a candidate based on certain stereotypes? What do you do? Do you just let it be? Or do you, gather courage and talk to the hiring manager? First, at the risk of being proven wrong, what would you do? So here an ethical dilemma will come. What would you do if you know that layoffs are planned in your company and there is a colleague who's planning to buy a car or a house or something? Would you go and warn your colleague about impending problem? What would you do? Another important thing, if you are supposed to reduce manpower in your team and there are two people, one is an underperformer, but good for whatever he's doing, something he can do, but there is another person who otherwise a high performer, high potential, but going through a rough patch in his life for whatever reason, and you know that this person is not going to be in his or her normal self for quite some time, and his performance would be even worse than the other employees underperformer. Who would you ask to go? Right? The ethical question might be even more complex than these. I could think only of these, while I was writing these in the limited time, but here you have to make a call. What is more important? Here you need to demonstrate courage. So these are the ethical questions which test your authenticity and test your commitment to the values that you espouse. Right. So now these are the questions which test your value system. Right? So I will just conclude this, and maybe after that, I think I have some 10-15 minutes remaining. I can take some questions also. So to conclude, authenticity is not just being yourself. It is not that. We should not equate automaticity or consistency or being your natural self as authenticity. It is about awareness of yourself, awareness of your surroundings. That matters. Being present in the situation, having more authentic conversations, having the courage to speak up to business leaders, to have difficult conversations with employees if required. It is about humility. It is about accepting that we don't have all the answers. It is about accepting that we might be wrong sometimes. It is accepting that people, for whom you are designing something, they might have a better answer than you. That kind of humility. And having an integrity based on a firm value system, which helps you take decisions when you are, you have to take a decision which tests your value system. Right? So HR needs to build trust of employees through all these things, and which further improves the overall effectiveness of the organization. And that is why it is fundamental to building a trusting environment and fundamental to building a great business. So that is what I had for you today. I'm open to any questions that you might have.
So thank you very much, Ashutosh ji, with these wonderful insights, experiences, and examples you have shared. It would be good to collate that authentic leadership for HR signifies some crisp takeaways for all our webinar participants. No mirroring of self, keep religiously validating the values of sincerity, honesty, remain focused, be energetic, maintain rapport, have high levels of emotional intelligence, and of course, be creditable. The thank you notice. With this, I request the participants to pose questions in the question and answer box or the chat box available so that we could request Ashutosh ji to answer. I take the privilege to thank Ashutosh Sharma once again for sharing his experiences with us. I'm looking at the chat box, looking out for certain questions.
We have a question. How can we make authentic leadership more heart level leadership in these unprecedented times?
No. So there are a number of questions coming actually. So I would request Dr. Rao to choose one and ask me to
Okay,
answer.
okay. So there was something nice which is coming in where it says who is the author of Humble Inquiry?
Yeah, it is Dr. Edgar Schein.
Oh wow, that's nice. That's nice.
Edgar Schein, Schein.
Okay. And there's a nice question which asks, how would you compare servant leadership to authentic leadership?
Yeah. So see, there are many models of leadership. Servant leadership being one of them. So servant leadership basically says that the basic function of leadership is to serve others, right? If you want others to do something for you, then you are not a leader. Basically, you are a tyrant. You're not a leader. So authentic leadership and servant leadership, the connect that I found or I think is it is externally oriented. It is not about self. Like I said in the beginning, that if I say that I will be like I want to be like I will be my natural self, then it is about self. It is not about others. Authentic leadership means basically understanding what exactly are my shortcomings, right? Which might be natural to me, but which are not going to serve the higher purpose or the larger purpose, so to say. Higher, I don't know, but at least larger purpose. It should be. Example, I will tell you that I sometime, in fact, it was quite some time ago, around 15 years ago. I was in Jaipur, and in a restaurant. And it's not about leadership, but it tells you what it means. I was in Jaipur and I ordered a dish, and I did not find it very good. So I told the captain, hey captain, I think somehow this dish is not so great. So he said, no sir, maybe you don't know, this is how authentic dal makhani tastes like. So now I did not like his authenticity, and I did not like his authentic dish also. So now, which means that authenticity did not help me, so to say. So authenticity has to help, it has to help somebody, and then when it does so, it becomes servant leadership.
Okay, very nice, sir. Thank you. There's one interesting question. Are these concepts applicable to HR personnel only or to leaders of any function in general?
Well, right. So see, now, again, it comes to the definition of leader. So anybody can be a leader is what I believe, right? As when you are an HR personnel dealing with say 100, 200 people, you are a leader to them. They look up to you for direction. So it's possible that maybe a general manager will call an HR executive and ask for, he'll pose questions. What should I do in this scenario? How do you advise me that I deal with this candidate? Right? Then you become a leader, no? So it might be, position wise, you are not a leader, but you are leading the other guy. And believe me, when business leaders reach out to you, I have also, grown through the ranks. So I can tell you that, they don't look at your designation at all. They if you are able to help them, they'll be happy. Whether you are a general manager or an HR executive or a manager or a senior manager, it actually doesn't matter.
Very nice, sir. There is one more question which seems to be very nice and interesting. How do you handle paradoxes at the workplace?
So it has to be a little more specific, but paradoxes will always be there. I don't know what kind of paradoxes the person is referring to. But paradoxes, I don't know if it should say that, maybe conflicts is a better word, or dilemmas are better word. Whether I should do this or that, this right or that right. Here, very Nietzsche said, the bow with great tension. Nietzsche said. He said that, when you have that bow with great tension, then only you can actually, put an arrow, shoot an arrow. Otherwise, there will be no activity. Paradoxes is the way of life. Conflicts are the way of life. Ironies will be there, and that is what propels things. Otherwise, there will be no action. So it is the reality, and we need to accept it and go with it. Yeah.
Very nice, sir. Thank you. So there's one interesting question which says HR today is driven by technology. Can you believe and build up authenticity through effective use of technology, which is a software aspect validation?
Right. See, authenticity, yes. In a way, yes. Technology can be used for any purpose. Right? So obviously, it cannot replace the human touch. I remember one of my colleagues in GMR used to say P-touch and E-touch. He used to talk about. E-touch is good, but P-touch is also required. Personal touch instead of electronic touch. But yes, understanding people, you can conduct surveys. There is something called, I was reading today, moodometer. You can carry out sociometrics analysis. And these days in during COVID, one thing will become very, very prevalent, which is like sensors for social distancing. We are already toying with the idea of providing a sensor to everybody, which will tell you who you came in contact with and from how far. So you can actually do a lot of study, who is connected to whom, who's meeting whom, what is the social structure of your organization. You can get to know about it, and you can take more authentic, more real-time decisions based on such data.
Very nice, sir. Thank you. I think we can take the last question before we thank and conclude the participants. How can we make authentic leadership more heart level leadership in these unprecedented times of COVID?
See, it's a difficult question. It is a really difficult question, because businesses are going through a lot of tough time today, right now. So people will have to take difficult decisions. How do you take those difficult decisions and implement them will require a lot of authenticity, and would also require a lot of empathy on our part. So I actually was going through a lot of articles where instead of laying off people looked at things like everybody taking a cut, or or looking at other possible things like sending everybody on 3 weeks unpaid leave rather than cutting 30% of the staff. So one needs to look at situations more empathetically, more in a more compassionate way currently. And I suppose that is where there will be no right answers, though. There are no right answers.
Okay.
But there will be authentic answers, obviously, to every situation. One needs to not take decisions in a hurry. One needs to think them through. Yeah.
Okay, so now, in fact, based upon the latest text, someone has privately texted me. It says, it's a moderator's pick basically. Authentic leaders need to be it, make it, do it, but just don't fake it. So that's basically, I found it very interesting. So that was my pick for the day. My special thanks to certain people I would like to put on record. Sri Naresh Pinisity ji, Chairman of Diploma Board, Dr. Nataraj Ray ji, our National President, Dr. Avinash Joshi ji, our Director, Diploma Board members, National Council members, faculty members, our wonderful diploma students, guests and invitees who actively participated in this webinar and made it wonderful and fantabulous. Thanks to all of you once again, and Jai Hind.